In today's case that the city has given us to all our members, not just all of you that are on the call. And if you want more information or feel like you didn't receive that, you can reach out to me directly, pfrew@cbcky.com, if you don't get it. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Lisa Grout. Lisa.
All right, thanks, Pat. Well, welcome everybody today. Just a few housekeeping items as we get started. So we are using a Zoom format, webinar format today. So all attendees are automatically muted and the video has been disabled. So if you have questions as we move throughout today, which we hope you do, please submit those via the Q&A button or via the chat button in the bottom panel of your Zoom screen. So as a moderator, I'll be keeping an eye on that and can be sure that your questions get funneled to our experts today. So as Pat mentioned, my name is Lisa Grout. I'm with HR Elements, and we provide HR consulting support services for our clients based here in Covington. We also have clients over in Cincinnati, as well as up in Dayton and Indianapolis. So thanks really to Pat and everybody at the CBC for having us this morning. So we are grateful to have Bruce Applegate and Tom West from the City of Covington with us today. And I'm going to just briefly introduce them before we get started. So Bruce Applegate is the City of Covington's Assistant City Manager. Bruce works across the city's various departments to look for collaboration opportunities and to ensure the city takes advantage of economies of scale. So the cross-departmental focus led to his recent designation by Mayor Meyer as the city's coronavirus response coordinator. And then additionally, we have Tom West. So Tom is the City of Covington's Economic Development Director. So his department is responsible for business attraction, retention, expansion programs, as well as administering the city's zoning code and historic preservation guidelines. Prior to City of Covington, Tom was the Senior Vice President of a national economic development and workforce consulting firm with clients from Oregon to the Carolinas. So he also served as the Executive Director of Governor Beshear's Workforce Investment Board for 5 years. So thank you so much to Bruce and Tom for joining us today, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you guys.
Great, thank you, Lisa, Pat, Christine, and Angela for setting this meeting up today and for providing Tom and I an opportunity to speak about some of the next steps and current steps the city has taken in response to the novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to start by saying thank you to our business owners for the impact they have on our local economy, the employment opportunities you provide to the citizens of the region, and the services you provide to our residents are critical. Each of these contributions are crucial to sustaining the one-of-a-kind community that is Covington. And again, without your personal efforts, the city would not be what it is today. We know that a lot has changed over the last month and a half. The need to practice social distancing in response to the new coronavirus strain has ground a lot of the city's day-to-day activities to a halt. Furthermore, the new shelter-in-place initiatives across the country have introduced a level of uncertainty for each of us that hasn't been seen or experienced in the last 75 to 100 years. During this time of uncertainty, the city is committed to operating as close to its usual processes as possible, even though we have a large percentage of our administrative staff working remotely. The mayor, commissioners, and city manager are all on the same page about continued operation being our top priority. We want to ensure that when residents and local businesses reach out for regular needs assistance or coronavirus concerns, that someone is here to assist and pick up the call. The challenges presented by the novel coronavirus and the practices issued to limit its spread have led to our local businesses stepping up and partnering with our community health efforts in a number of ways. One, our life essential and non-life essential businesses have embraced non-traditional operations to keep providing services to the residents of Covington in compliance with the governor's various healthy at home initiatives. The closure of your storefronts, limitation of in-person service delivery, and the reduction in the number of individuals allowed inside ensure that we are minimizing the spread of coronavirus. Two, several businesses have also been able to retool and adjust their current operating models to produce goods and services necessary for the state of Kentucky to keep outfitting healthcare workers with PPE and communities with the resources to minimize transmission. Finally, the city provided a recent outreach to our local businesses with a solicitation for any PPE that could be donated for use by our first responders. The donations received were overwhelming and have helped mitigate some of the supply chain issues that we are currently facing. I will say it's a real credit to Tom's understanding of the local business community, how quickly he responded with policies aimed at relief for small businesses. I'm highlighting Tom because he's the follow-up speaker, but I would note that the economic development team as a whole has accepted the challenge of seeing how we can modify our current resources to assist our local businesses and to help them weather the storm and thrive once it's passed. His staff have worked diligently to create a single-stop resource for impacted local businesses found on the city's COVID-19 webpage, and some creative local options aimed at minimizing the impact to our local businesses are located there as well. With that, I'll turn it over to Tom.
And mute there. Thanks, Bruce. Good afternoon, everybody. You know, it's kind of difficult to comprehend the world that we're living in right now when we look outside, like I just did there, and see such a beautiful spring day, and then somebody walks by wearing a mask, and we're kind of jolted back into reality. But as Governor Beshear says every day at 5 o'clock, we will get through this. We will get through this together. And that together part that he throws in there is really what has driven my staff. And to a person, each one of them has contributed to these assistance initiatives that we're providing as a city to our business community. Now, my whole staff is working remotely right now. And you can see I'm in my home right now as well. And I'm really, really proud of them. And I hope if some of you, and I know some of you, who are on, I saw the list of who was going to be on today. Some of you have had the opportunity to work with them and hopefully will after today, that you just kind of let them know that you appreciate their commitment to the COV and to your business as well. I want to briefly talk about some of the initiatives that my department, and it wasn't just our department, but we were along with several other departments, have put together to help our small businesses in small ways and in some bigger ways. And we kind of had three goals in mind. I don't know if we ever actually wrote them down, but we kind of had three goals in mind as we went through this. First and foremost was to try to assure that our smallest and most vulnerable businesses would be able to survive this crisis. And the second thing was to make sure that as many people as possible could remain employed throughout this. And then finally, to try to do everything that we could to make sure that Covington has a jump start on recovery as we start to move in the direction of recovery. So I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for your all's questions. So I want to kind of run through what these initiatives were that Bruce was referencing. You can find all of these on that COVID-19 webpage. Just click on the part that says business assistance. So I'll run through these fairly quickly and not get into too much detail. The first one, I kind of gave them nicknames when I was preparing for today. The first one I'm calling Cocktails to Go. The state alcohol beverage control made some changes that would allow this to happen. And our local ABC administrator, Michael Bartlett, worked with the mayor to make sure that we could have an executive order that would allow our restaurants to sell cocktails as well as other adult beverages with both delivery and carry-out meals. So if you want to order, you know, a bourbon and branch or a gin and tonic with your burger from a Covington restaurant, you can do that. They'll just put a lid on it and you can get it delivered or carry that out of the restaurant. The second one is no fee permits. Now we know that, and again, this is one of those small ways, but could have a meaning in recovery because we know that construction projects, both workers and materials are very, very important. Again, keeping jobs, keeping the economy going, keeping progress moving. So what we did was we got together with the Neighborhood Services Department and the Public Works Department and said, hey, can we waive our permit fees for zoning, encroachment permits, and dumpster permit fees while the emergency order from the mayor is in place? and thankfully they joined with us. And so all of those permits right now, if you have a construction project you want to get underway, now's the time to get those permits applied for, so we can waive those fees for you. The next one is, I didn't come up with a clever nickname for this, but what they did is so important, and that was our finance department has agreed to extend the filing deadline, and a little bit different than I think the federal, because I think they still require you to pay, but you don't have to file. But you can file and pay 90 days past the normal deadline. And that doesn't matter when your fiscal year ends. So if you had an April 15th deadline, that's now extended to July 15th. If you had a May 15th deadline, that's now extended to August 17th. June goes to September, and so on. So I think hopefully that is a great way that our finance department has kicked in to help businesses out. That goes for your occupational license fees, as well as the net profits tax as well. So both of those are covered by that. And then finally, the one that's a little bit bigger, it's gotten a lot of media attention, and it's thankfully gotten a lot of attention from the business community, because we are now reviewing these 2 days a week, and that is our emergency rent and mortgage assistance program. We actually started off by encouraging, we sent a letter to some of the larger commercial landlords in town and asking them to exercise patience and compassion for their small business tenants through this crisis and this, what amounts to really a shutdown of a lot of businesses. But then we followed up by putting, kind of the taxpayers' money where our mouth was. In addition to asking them the landlords to be compassionate and patient, we also put together a funding pool of $200,000 where we could offer cash assistance of up to $500 a month for 4 months for retailers, restaurateurs, personal service businesses like hair salons, gyms, and others. Again, the smallest and most vulnerable. I'm very fond of saying that Covington is not a chain city. We have very few chain operations here when it comes to retail and restaurants. Most of ours are homegrown, they're rooted locally, and we like that, and it also means that we can all pull together. So when we looked at this, one of our thoughts was that this, by putting up this $200,000 now, is going to produce a better return on investment for the taxpayer in Covington, because if we invest those resources now in our commercial neighbors, we likely, if we can keep those businesses alive, will not have to spend months, and in some cases, maybe even more than a year, trying to find new businesses to fill those storefronts. And Covington could go back to looking like a ghost town. So if we could invest $2,000 per business in about 100 businesses, maybe we could avoid that outcome and come through this thing with a jump start on recovery. As Bruce mentioned before, all the details about these initiatives and the application for the rent and mortgage program is on the city's website. You just have to click on it on the business section. I know that we got a representative on here from Kentucky Bourbon Bar, and we reviewed their application the end of last week, and I signed the request for the contract on Monday. So y'all should be getting your money very soon, because that contract was approved and signed. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to, is it going to you, Lisa?
Yeah, so one of the questions that has come in, I'll post to either Bruce or Tom. From your perspective, what are the most vulnerable businesses, industry type wise, that are at risk of not reopening? And to follow up on that, if you can talk a little bit about how that's played into the potential solutions that you're offering to businesses.
Okay, I'll start off, and Bruce, if you want to chime in. Tom Colicchio, those of you who, if you've ever watched Top Chef, you know who he is. the main judge on that. He kind of got out in front of this over a month ago. I remember seeing him talk about how the United States could lose more than half of our restaurants as a result of this. So I think restaurants, maybe bars not as much, but certainly restaurants and certain bricks and mortar retailers, if they're not well funded and don't necessarily have the cash to get through this, are probably some of the most vulnerable. They tend to be more of that. We talk about, families that live paycheck to paycheck. A lot of restaurants kind of live paycheck to paycheck. We've seen them, suffer earliest and most visibly. I think we've done some things to try to maybe help that out a little bit. The being able to order cocktails. It may not sound like a huge thing, but that hopefully can make a difference. And that's why we've targeted these rent subsidies towards those businesses. And again, I think there's a huge community here in Covington that understand, for the most part, our restaurants here are locally owned. These are your neighbors. They may be your residential neighbors as well as your commercial neighbors. And people tend to pull together and try to support them. Little tiny things that we do at City Hall, when we order to go or delivery, whether we're working from home or working at the office, our communications director asks us to take a picture of the food so he can post it on social media so that it reminds everybody else who follows us to also do that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Any success stories in terms of Covington businesses that are keeping employment at high levels, even if folks are working remotely? We'd love to hear about some of those success stories. I know we all need them right now.
Yeah. We've been talking to some of the larger employers. Our finance director, he's doing a really good job for the city, wants to make sure that we know how much revenue is going to be coming in. So to try to help him with those projections, we've been talking to some of the larger employers. Our biggest private employer is Fidelity Investments. Had a conversation with Kevin Canifax last week. They have a few folks working on campus following the CDC's guidelines for distancing. But more importantly than that, they had close to 4,000 people working from home. So they're still on the payroll. So they're still contributing, in that respect, as far as the revenue. So my finance director is very happy at the city, but we're happy because those folks haven't lost their jobs, and we know that as soon as we're all allowed back outside, that campus is going to be bustling again.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Going back to some of the assistance programs that are available, if business owners apply for the emergency rent and mortgage business assistance program, what kind of timelines should they expect when they submit those applications?
Okay, depending on when they get it in, again, we're doing reviews of these on Mondays and Wednesdays. So if you can get it in on a Tuesday or a Friday, that really helps. And once we do the review, our goal is to try to get that contract signed and out the door to folks certainly in less than 2 weeks. It's a reimbursement program. So once you, and when I say get your application in, it needs to be a completed application. There are several attachments. We've tried to make it easy. We don't want this to be a very difficult exercise for folks. So we're just asking for a few necessary things. If you send all of that in complete to us, we're hoping to have a signed contract back to you in less than 2 weeks. We'd like to have it back to you in a week. So.
Okay, great. And can businesses apply for rental assistance and also apply for any or all of the federal programs available?
Absolutely. We think that the aid package that Congress passed was it week before last. I don't know. Everything runs together for me now when I'm working at home. But that aid package that they passed, that's great and that's helpful. But our assistance is not limited by or contingent upon participation in that. We would encourage every business in Covington impacted by this to get in there and apply for those funds. through the SBA, and as well as the other resources that are out there too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When you think about with a number of the requirements for businesses to shutter operations or reduce in-person contact, is the city more or less closed during this period of time?
No, again, I would take an opportunity just to reiterate the mayor's position and city manager David Johnson's position that we are open for business. You'll see our public works groups continuing to do work on our infrastructure out in the community. Our public safety individuals are out and about conducting business as usual. And as Tom mentioned, the big change is just that our administrative staff, for the most part, are operating out of the office. They are still getting quick turnaround time on their calls, and trying to make sure that, again, while the community is facing a number of disruptions in, their personal and professional lives, that we don't act as one of those things that's uncertain. We're just really, really trying to key in on the fact that we want to remain a constant for the city at this point in time.
Okay. Great, great. And I know we're all talking about social distancing right now. Can you guys speak to kind of how the social distancing is being enforced for businesses that are open right now, that remain open?
Sure. So the city is following the governor's guidelines at the current point in time. It's a 4-step process. We're starting off with the understanding that individuals are going to be conducting themselves as responsible adults and taking into consideration the issues that improper activity might have on our local community members. But if someone were to decide they were going to allow too many people in or not comply with the governor's orders, it's been requested that we initially work through the governor's office with their 1-833 KY Safer number to report the noncompliance. That's consolidated, or the noncompliance comments are consolidated and submitted down to the local health departments for an initial evaluation. Based off their determination, it's turned over to the municipalities, the local groups, and then we actually go out and do the enforcement from there. Starts off with a push towards collectively working to address the issue. If that doesn't seem to be achieving the results, then there are fines associated with noncompliance. And the really big tool is the ability to shutter the business's operations.
Okay, gotcha. One of our attendees, Marilyn, she's asking, are there requirements for a minimum number of employees in order to apply for rent assistance?
No, there are not. So it's really based on the type of business. Again, we're trying to go for those that are the smallest and most vulnerable. So there's not a minimum number of employee requirements. This is geared toward very small businesses. And while I'm talking about that, the Paycheck Protection Program that was part of the federal aid package, we hope that folks will do that. If they have laid folks off, that they can hire them back, even if they're shuttered for the time to get them back on the payroll. That is really helpful. And the other thing I would say while I'm on this is if, we'll cover up to $500 a month, assuming that your rent or your mortgage payment is $1,000 or more. If it's only $800, then we'll cover $400. But if you only need $200, just ask for $200. That leaves another $300 in there, maybe for another business. And that sacrifice can help us maybe keep another business alive through this too. And I know Covington, and I know Covington business people. And I remember back when we had the fire at the Oddfellows Hall, and how all the businesses around there pitched in and helped each other out. And so, we would ask for that as well. If you don't need all of it, then don't ask for all of it, and if you start to get the federal aid and you don't need as much local anymore, let's see if we can help some other businesses out that aren't as fortunate. So
that's great. And just curious if you guys are, if you're tracking how many inquiries you've fielded from businesses and, you know, maybe any insight into the most commonly asked questions from those inquiries.
I wish I had the time to track that. My guess is we're probably getting inquiries from anywhere from 15 to 20 a day, looking for resources, offering up, as Bruce said earlier, supplies, willing to make donations, trying to figure out how they can help, as well as asking us for assistance or trying to get guidance or direction. I'm proud to say that, you know, my department has a great staff, but I know we're not the only ones answering these questions. Other departments are getting from businesses as well. So yeah. I know our department's getting about 20 a day.
Okay. Okay. Great. Great. Any other questions from the attendees that are still on right now? Again, you can submit those via the Q&A button or the chat button on the bottom of your Zoom panel. Alrighty, well, I know we're pretty close on time anyway. So again, thank you, Bruce and Tom, for being with us today and kind of giving us and sharing all this important information.
Thank you, Lisa, and thanks, Pat, and thanks, CBC, and all of the businesses out there. This is a great thing you guys have going on. Very, very happy that you're doing it. Proud of you all.
Yeah, great job, gentlemen. We appreciate your input, and this is, I think, helpful for all our businesses, and we'll certainly share that in terms of the video or the video and audio of this, as well as the resources you've shared with us, and direct them to the city for those. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Lisa.
If I could jump in one last comment, please make sure to keep up to date on our COVID-19 webpage. If we have any new programs or any changes to our current practices, it'll be there first. And then our communications manager will be doing a good job to diligently get that out by our normal communication channels, social media, et cetera. But keep an eye out to that. And if you have any other questions, comments, or otherwise, feel free to reach out to us. Again, the city's open for business.
Great. Alrighty. Thanks everybody for your participation today, and everybody have a great day and get out and enjoy this weather. Thanks.